This video is for the solving equations foldable. And so it's going to go through one step, two step, multi-step, all different kinds here. So on these first equations, one step, all we're doing is just doing the opposite. And we're trying to get the letter by itself. We're trying to get the variable by itself. So here we've got x plus 9. So to get rid of the plus 9, we just subtract it from both sides. And so we've got x, and then this will cancel, equals a -6. So here we've got f minus 2. So to do the opposite of minus 2, we would just add 2 to both sides. And we would have f, and these cancel, and then 13. Now we've got multiplication. So when you have a number and a letter shoved up against each other, that's multiplication. So to do the opposite of multiplication, you divide. And so 48 divided by -4 is a -12. Then these would cancel. So now here we've got division. So the opposite of division, we would just multiply both sides by that number. So these would cancel. So m would equal -27. And now we've got a fraction. So to do the opposite of a fraction, you use its reciprocal. And you multiply both sides by that. And so here I would get -12. And then this would cancel, and I'd be left with the y. So down here on the independent practice, same thing. This is being subtracted. So to do the opposite, we add. So this cancels. Here we've got division or multiplication. So division's the opposite. So -108 divided by 9 would give me a -12. I believe that's a j. So here we've got division. So the opposite is multiplication. And so -7 times -9 is a +63. And then again, we're multiplying by reciprocals if we have fractions. And so 4/15 times 5/8. Let's see, would give me a 1/6. So these cancel. And so one way that you can do this, you can break these down. So 8 is the same as 4 times 2. 15 is the same as 3 times 5. Remember, I told you if you've got the same number on top as the same number on bottom on the other side, those would cancel. The same works like with these 5s, they would cancel. So I would be left with 1 over, and then whatever you're left with, 3 times 6. But again, your calculator does this for you. All right, so two-step equations. Remember, we're doing PEMDAS backwards. So we do the addition and the subtraction first, and then the multiplication and division. So I want to get rid of the subtraction first. And so I would have 4y equals 20, and then I would divide by the 4. So y equals 5. So same thing, I want to get rid of that subtraction first. And then z is being divided by 3, so I would multiply both sides by 3. This cancels. And then here we would add a 1 to both sides. And then divide both sides by 7. And then here we would subtract 4 from both sides. Those cancel. And then we would multiply both sides by 3, so those would cancel. Okay. All right, so down here, what we've got to do is we've got to get this number off the bottom. So what we can do first to start off with is we can multiply both sides by whatever the denominator is. We can multiply both sides by 8. And that will cancel it down here and leave me with y minus 13. And then 14 times 8 is 112. So I know that's a little different than what we've been doing. We're just simplifying the expression so we don't have that denominator to fight with. And then we would just add 13 to both sides. So y equals 125. So same thing here. We're going to multiply both sides by -3. So that'll cancel. And then we're going to subtract a 6 from both sides. All right, now we've got to combine like terms. So 8y and 3y are like terms. If I combine them, I get 11y equals 44. And then I can solve. Then I can divide both sides by 11. Same thing here. We've got like terms that we need to combine. So 13 and a -5 gives me an 8. And then I can divide by 8. So that's it for two-step equations. On multi-step equations, I want to get all the x's to one side and all the constants to the other side. So I always like to move the variables first, and I always move the smaller of the variable. So I would have 2x plus 14, this cancels, equals 80. And now I can just solve like I normally do. So 80 minus 14 is going to give me 66. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So 66 divided by 2 is 33. Here, I've got to combine like terms. So positive 6 and a -2 is 4c minus 8. And then we just continue on. So make sure that you're always distributing and combining like terms. And so here I could say c equals 2/4, or I could simplify that down and say c equals 1/2. All right, so here I've got a lot of like terms. So I've got -3x and positive x, then positive 25 and a positive 21. So -3x and positive x gives me a -2x. 25 and 21 gives me a 46. And then again, once I've combined all my like terms, I can solve as normal. And divide by -2. So x equals 22. All right, more like terms. So remember, keep the signs. Make sure you're watching those signs. So positive 5x and -4x is a positive x, sorry. Let me focus for you here. And then a -11 plus 24 is plus 13. So my answer is a -8. So now we're going to solve multi-step equations involving the distributive property. Property. And then up here it should be by first combining like terms. Okay, so we've got to distribute first, and then we will have to combine. So 5m stays the same. 2 times m is 2m. 2 times 1 is 2. And then here I've got like terms, so I've got 7m plus 2 equals 23. Subtract the 2 from both sides. So I've got 21. Divide by 7. I have to work over here. So this cancels, so m will equal 3. Same thing, we distribute first. So 2 times 4g would be 8g, 2 times -3 would be a -6. So now here are my like terms. So I've got 8 plus 8g equals 40. So we're going to subtract the 8 from both sides. So 8g equals 32. And when we divide both sides by 8, G will equal 4. All right, so we got to do it again. Now look, this time we're multiplying by a -3. So -3 times +6 is a -18. -3 times a -2c is a +6c. Combine like terms. So that would be 9c. And then solve as normal. And then divide both sides. And then finally, now we got a fraction to deal with. So 3/2 x, and then 3/2 times 5 is going to give me something wonky. So if I do 3/2 times 5, it's the same as 3/2 times 5/1, and that would give me 15/2. So it's, you just multiply the top number. So I would have minus 15/2 equals a -6. So I would add this to both sides. And I would have, let's see, plus 15/2. So I would subtract this from both sides. Oh, I've already done that, sorry. 15/2, so I'm left with 3/2 x. This cancels. -6 plus 15/2 is going to leave me with 3/2. Now I got 3/2 x equals 3/2. So again, if we multiply by the reciprocal, now they both cancel out, but I still have invisible math over here. X would equal 1. And if you look at that equation, 3/2 x equals 3/2, your brain should trigger and say, oh, a number times 1 always equals itself. And I apologize, I did this top one wrong. I thought it was an equal sign. This should have combined like terms here. So this should have been a 22x. So it should have been 66 divided by 22. And the answer should have been 2. Sorry for that mistake. Okay, so equations with variables on both sides. So this is where we're going to move the smallest variables. So 6m is smaller than 8m. So this cancels. And then we can solve as usual. So I would have 2m equals a -4 divided by 2. And I would get m equals -2. So there's a reason I always move the smaller variable. In the end, it creates one less step typically. Minus the 5. Oh, that should be a -11. So always watch your signs. So this would be 4c equals -16 divided by 4 divided by 4. C equals a -4. And so special cases, so in this one we're going to have to distribute first, and we get 12x plus 6, and then over here we're going to distribute, and we get 12x plus 6, and you can see here that they're both equal to each other. So when they're both equal to each other, we have an infinite number of solutions. No matter what number we put in there, it's always going to equal the same. Now, when we get no solution, so if we distribute here, we would have -15n plus 10. And so if we start moving things around, so if I add this to both sides, trying to get the variable together, I would have 2. This would cancel, and this says 2 equals 10. So 2 can never equal 10. So there would be no solution to that problem. And so that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll work on the word problems.